I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a chainsaw going right outside my window. They're cutting down a bunch of trees literally outside my window, maybe like 50 feet away. So if you hear that, that's what it is. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Megan and today I'm going to be doing my August reading wrap up. Now I want to apologize because this is a little bit late for me to be doing this, but I've tried filming this like 2 to 3 times, and each time that I did it, either one, I think I filmed once when it was like super late at night and I didn't feel like I had any energy at all. I mean, I know I'm not the most outgoing, like over the top YouTuber or booktuber. That's just not my like personality, but I felt like I was super low energy. So I didn't like that one. And then the other ones that I did, I just felt like I was taking forever to get through the video. Like it was like a 20-25 minute video, long video. And I felt like I was rambling when I was trying to review the different books. So leave a comment down below. Do you like shorter review videos or do you like longer review videos? Like, what is your ideal length of video to watch? So anyway, I'm gonna try and make this short. So I'm editing this now afterwards and I'm realizing this video is still about 18 minutes long. I'm really sorry. Apparently I just love to talk. So grab a drink and a snack and here we go. What I'm going to do is tell you the book that I read, the author. If I have the book with me, which most of them I don't, but if I have the book with me, I'll show you what it looks like. And if not, then I will put a picture of the book here. And then I'll let you know how I rated it. So I have an account on Goodreads and I have been putting books on there and rating them. I haven't been writing reviews for many of them, but I am going back and writing reviews for all the books that I've read since I've started recording videos for this channel. I'm still catching up on a whole bunch of books because for this last month of August, I read about 10, I mean, technically I read more than 10 books. And so that's a lot of reviews for me to write, and it does take me a little bit longer to write out my ideas and my thoughts. So I am still catching up, but I do plan to get to all of them at some point. So I will leave a link to my Goodreads account down below if you'd like to read my reviews. They're a little bit more in depth. They give a little bit more of an explanation on why I did or didn't like things, and you can look at them there. I'll be giving you what my star rating is based on the Goodreads account or the reviews that I left on Goodreads. And I'll also be letting you know if my actual review rating differs. Because if you are familiar with Goodreads, you can only rank in whole numbers, like 4 out of 5 stars. But sometimes the book isn't quite a 4-star book, but it's not a 3-star book. And so I'll let you know if that happens. The other thing is, if you're interested in seeing a more in-depth video review of the book, also leave a comment down below letting me know which book you'd like me to go in a little bit more depth on, and I can do that also. I didn't have, but I participated in 3 different readathons for the month of August. There was the Newt's Magical Readathon that took place the entire month of August, and then I used some of those books that I was planning to read for that readathon and did some overlap. So some of the books that I read for the Booktubeathon challenge, that was in the very first week of August, and then the TBR Throwdown challenge hosted by Creating & Co. And I think it was the 3rd week of August. There was some overlap with those books, but in the end, I got a lot of reading done. This is probably the most that I've read in 1 month for the entire year, if you don't include the graduate school work that I was doing at the beginning of the year. So 10 books, I guess maybe technically like 9 if you count all of the manga that I read together as like one series, but if you count them individually, then it's more than 10 books. So let me go ahead and get started. If I'm looking down below, it's because I'm referencing notes, because it's been a few weeks, it's been a lot of books. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The first book is actually not a book I read for a readathon. It was a book that I picked up from the library. I was just browsing their new books shelf and saw this book, and it kind of spoke to me. It's called Decluttering at the Speed of Life, and it's by Dana K. White. This is basically a book that's exactly what it is. It talks about decluttering at the speed of your own life, because not everybody has the time to sit down or spend an entire day for multiple days decluttering. So she kind of talks a little bit more about how you can manage it in smaller increments of time and make it more like realistic and reasonable without being overwhelming. I really liked her writing style. I thought that it was easy to read, it was relatable. She gave anecdotes, but they were small anecdotes, and they were also, I felt, like I said, relatable. And so overall, I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. I thought the concepts were clear and easy to follow and very straightforward. The next book that I read, I actually have the physical copy, and it's this book here. It's The Boys in the Boat, and it's by Daniel James Brown. And this was a book about it says here at the very top, 9 Americans and their quest for the gold at the 1936 Berlin Olympics. So I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars, but I am going to admit I'm a little bit biased because I rode in high school, and so this brought back all the feels, like so much nostalgia. So why did I like it? I liked it because they explain rowing like as if you're in the boat and kind of the feelings behind it. And so it really brought me back to when I was in high school and sitting on the water and just the feel of moving through a rowing stroke and feeling united with the team. So there's elements of that. I also really like the story. It does kind of focus a little bit more on one of the men in this boat, but it does also talk about the other men in the boat in relation to this one guy. And so I liked to see kind of their story and their struggles. This talks, this is for the 1936 Olympics, so we're talking about moving out of the Great Depression. So you kind of see a little bit of that, of how families are doing in the West. Takes place in Washington State mostly. How are families doing in the West, in Washington State, in the Great Depression, coming out of the Great Depression, and also what's going on a little bit more globally. So, like I said, I really enjoyed this book. I would highly recommend it. I would actually be curious as to your thoughts for someone maybe who is not a rower or has never rowed, like what you thought of this book, but I really enjoyed it. The next 2 books I'm going to talk about together because they're part of the same series. The first one is A Court of Thorns and Roses, and the second one is A Court of Mist and Fury, and they're both by Sarah J. Maas. So yes, I know I'm kind of late to the game on this series. I know there's still lots of people who are, picking it up and reading it for the first time. That was me last month. So I read the first book, and on Goodreads I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars, but honestly, I'm kind of thinking it's a little bit more like a 3.75, maybe a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And my reasoning for this is because I thought the beginning was actually quite slow. I didn't like Fair, who's the main character. I didn't like her at the beginning. I felt like the pacing was a little bit slow. There's a lot of getting to know the characters and getting to know the world, because she more or less goes into another world, so to speak. I mean, it's the same world, but she crosses a wall and a bunch of things change. And so there was a lot of figuring things out and what's going on. And I didn't understand why everyone loved this book and this series. But then, right about 50%, maybe even 60% of the way through, things changed, and all of a sudden it was boom, here's all the action. And I love the book. So I love the book at the end, and I really started to grow. The characters did actually start to grow on me at the end. So based on that, I do give it a higher than 50% rating, but it kind of took a little while to get there. Now, the second book, because the end of the first book really got me interested in the characters, I jumped right into that second book. So A Court of Mist and Fury is number 2 in the series. I gave this a solid 5 out of 5 stars. I really loved that we got to see more of the characters, both Fair, the main character, and some of the other characters in this second book. We get to see more of their motivations, their background story, why they are the way they are. And I just felt like there was a lot more development in the characters themselves. There was also a lot of I felt like continuous action. So to me, the pacing was a lot better as well. So like I said, overall, 5 out of 5 stars for that book. The next book that I read was, well, it wasn't actually the next book, but the next book on my list is Starry Eyes, and this is by Jen Bennett. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. This is a YA contemporary novel, and it's not a genre I usually read, but it actually was pleasantly surprising to pick up. I found that, at least in my eyes, I thought that the dialogue between the characters was fairly authentic, or at least it seemed that way to me. Now, I'm not a teenager. I haven't been a teenager for a while. I don't have any teenagers. I don't really work with or interact with teenagers on a regular basis, so I might be wrong, but I at least liked the dialogue. And I thought that the storyline was cute. There is one thing at the end that kind of irks me a little bit, and so I mentioned that in my Goodreads review, and that's kind of why I didn't give it a full 5 out of 5 stars. But overall, I like the writing style, and I thought it was an easy read. And I am kind of interested to read more of Jen Bennett's stuff, having read this one. Another book I read this month is Beneath the Sugar Sky, and this is by Seanan McGuire. It's the 3rd book in the Wayward Children series, and of those 3 books that I've read, because I think there's a 4th one coming out, but of those 3 books that I've read, this is by far my favorite book, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. The first book kind of introduces us to the characters and this idea of alternate dimensions that children can go through, to like doorways to other worlds. And then the second book focuses on 2 of the characters that we met in the first book. This 3rd book focuses on more of the characters that we've met, and we get to see more of their worlds, which is so cool. And their characters and their worlds that I was initially intrigued by and wanted to know more about. And so now we get to see more of that. So that's really why it's my favorite book, because they're all characters that I love. This book does involve multiple characters. I guess it's more of like an ensemble cast, you could say. But I thought it was done really well, where even though there are I think there's is there 4 main characters? I think there's 5. Kind of 5 main characters, and then it shifts to 4, and then there's a lot of supporting characters. But I think that overall, I thought there was this really good interplay and kind of weaving in and out between, an interaction between the characters, so I just really liked it. Another book that I read is Meddling Kids. This is by Edgar Cantero, this book I gave a 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. This is a book about, it kind of takes the idea of the Scooby-Doo kids who solve mysteries and find that the monster from the lake is actually just a man in a suit. But it takes this idea of those kids and says, what happens if we see them 13 years later, and what if one of their mysteries kind of remains unsolved because it wasn't a man in a monster costume, it was actually a monster, and so now they're kind of troubled by it, and they have to go back and kind of try to solve the mystery. So I thought that was kind of an interesting storyline. It does also integrate and use a little bit of the Cthulhu mythos, and takes a lot of those kind of names, so it references Arkham, Arkham Asylum, whatever that university is, I'm really drawing a blank right now. The university that's kind of referenced in the Cthulhu mythos and H.P. Lovecraft stories. But I thought this was it was a fun read. There's a little bit of kind of spoofing and sarcasm in it that I enjoyed reading. Some of the characters are not over the top, but definitely I feel kind of exaggerated and almost stereotyped in a way. And so while I see that some people could take issue with that, I did kind of enjoy it and take it for what it was, which was kind of this play on this mystery novel. So like I said, I enjoyed it. 4 out of 5 stars. The last book that I read before I get into the manga is A Wrinkle in Time, and this is by Meddling Kids. And on Goodreads I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars, but this is actually a 2.5 out of 5 stars for me. I know that this is a classic, and I actually on my Goodreads I talk about this, and I do a tiny little bit of a rant, I think, on my booktubeathon vlog. It's I think somewhere in the middle. if you're interested in seeing it. But basically, I really didn't like this book because I felt like it didn't age well. The writing style, especially the way that the children, the characters interact, to me is very like, you know, 1960s, which is when it was written, and not realistic at all. I think the language is a little bit dated, and kind of the names that they call each other, and I really don't like that Meg is whiny, and I don't like how the characters interact with her. And I also don't really like how there's a lot of like, you just don't understand because you're not smart enough, so we're not going to explain anything. And I get that it's a middle grade book and that maybe they don't need to go into all the like details and stuff, but I still feel like they used that excuse of like, well, you just don't get it, so we don't have to explain it, a little bit too much. Now, I've heard that the other books get better because Meg as a character gets better, so I probably will read them because I know they'll also be fast, but this book, 2 out of 5 stars, not my favorite. The last book, or I guess you could call it series, that I read is the Sailor Moon manga, and I read books 6 through 12, and they're all like a little bit out of order. So I'll show you the covers as I'm talking. So the reason why I read this was for a readathon, and because the readathon challenge was like read books with the most colorful covers, so I thought that all of these together would qualify. I really like this series. It did, to me, stand up to what I remember the TV series being. I thought that this last one was a tiny bit confusing, and I did have to Wikipedia some information and then reread it, but I don't know if that's because I was reading through everything really quickly or if it was truly confusing to me. So I'm not quite sure on that, but overall, I did really like this. I thought that it was easier to see the development of the characters and their maturity because you weren't watching lots of random episodes of them fighting monsters spaced in between the actual storyline, which is what happens in the TV series. So I felt like this was better to kind of see character development. So overall, I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this series, and it's one of the few kind of sets of books that I have physical copies of and that I'm keeping. It's mostly because of the artwork, but it's also because of the storyline and a little bit of the nostalgic factor. Alright, so that is my reading wrap up for the month of August. Let me know down below what you read for the month of August, and have you read any of the books that I read, and what did you think of them? Did you give them similar ratings as me, or is your rating like really different? I'm curious to know. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe for more book related videos. I promise I'm gonna try and do one book related video a week, so that way it's not completely planner heavy, because I know some of you might be subscribed more specifically for the book related videos, so I will try to keep that content going. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you in the comments and see you in the next video. Bye!